Hello. Today we are going to look briefly at controlling MIDI devices. So this is something which has changed in Tidal in the last year or so. Before we used something called Tidal-MIDI, which was another Haskell library, but now SuperClider takes care of all this. So we don't have to install anything new for this, which is good. But you do have to have a MIDI synthesizer. Here I'm going to show you how to do this with a actual MIDI hardware. I've got a keyboard here that I'm going to control, but you can do the same thing for controlling a software synthesizer that you just run on your computer or runs inside something like Ableton or another digital audio workstation. Anyway, let's see how it's done. Start off on the tidalcycles.org website. What you need to do is look for the MIDI page. Here there's stuff about controlling MIDI synths with Tidal, which we're going to do. There's also stuff about synchronizing MIDI clock. So that's if you have some other gear that you want to synchronize to what Tidal's doing, you can send it a pulse over MIDI, which will hopefully have it in sync perfectly. And also controlling Tidal with external controllers. So that's if you have something like this with sliders and things. I'll show you how to do that in a later video, probably the next one. Okay, so let's have a look at this SuperDirt MIDI tutorial. This tells you how to set things up. First of all, you have to initialize things in SuperClider. That will give you a list of MIDI devices you can use. You pick the one that you want to use, and then you add that MIDI device, or register it, and then add it to Dirt, giving it a name. So that's the 3 commands. I've already copied them into SuperClider. Here they are. So let's try the first one. There. Let's run it. Okay. Takes a second, but then here we go. So there's the sources and the destinations. So we, at this point, want to send events from SuperDirt to the synth. So we want a destination. I think, yeah, this is what the synth looks like, by the way. It's a Alesis Micron with a few sliders, a few octaves worth of keys and some knobs. And it's got a lot of things you can control on it, which you'd normally have to fill about with this menu, but with Tidal you can just control it directly. Okay, you've also seen the beautiful curtains in my spare room now. So yeah, so we've run this first line, MIDI client init, that's initialized things, and I'm looking through. This is the name of my, I want the destination. So this is the name of my controller, but actually I want to use the MIDI output that is on my mixer. So I can show you that as well, if you don't mind looking at breaking through the third wall, whatever it's called. Okay, so there, I think you can probably see that. This is my mixer, and I've got a MIDI cable coming out here, which is going around to my synth. Simple as that. If you're using software synths, you don't have to bother about cabling and stuff, of course, which is an advantage. Anyway, this is the one I want to use, so I'm copying everything in parenthesis here. XR18 is the name of the mixer, so I know it's that one. So I'm going to replace this because that's just an example in the documentation, this Focusrite thing. Although a lot of live coders seem to have Focusrite devices, I think, because they're pretty good and cheap. but I'm not sponsored by them, so say no more. Okay, so now I'm going to run this. And I know it's worked because it says MIDI out. That's what's gone into this variable. And now I can run this to add it to dirt. So this bit here, this /MIDI, the MIDI bit is actually the name of the sound. In a way, it's called the sound, which you'll address in Tidal. So I could give it a slightly more enigmatic name, like Alessis. So I'll run that instead. MIDI also makes sense if you just want to leave it as is. But remember that I've called it Alessis, keeping the slash there. And it says a dirt sound library, which is its way of saying that that's worked. So now we're in Tidal. So let's try doing that. So we called it Alessis, and I'm going to send some notes to it. So you can hear that quite quietly because I need to connect something. One moment. So that's coming in there. My apologies. Okay, that should be nice and loud. So these are MIDI notes. If you're familiar with MIDI, you might be more used to, like this is middle C0 in SuperDirt normally, but you might be more used to 60 being middle C, because with MIDI, 0 is like the lowest note, and 60 is actually the middle of the range. So if you want to use the MIDI default kind of way of speaking about notes, you can put MIDI note here instead, and it'll automatically subtract 60 from whatever you put in. I'm less familiar with MIDI, so I tend to just stick with these sort of notes. The aliases still works, so we can do this sort of thing. And just treat it like any other kind of MIDI notation pattern. And do the normal kind of transformations, like this, for example. So that's that. Doesn't get a lot more complicated than that, really. You just treat it like any other kind of sample bank or superglider synth. You just have something running in SuperDirt that will magically route it to the device for you. But then with this kind of synth, it's not just about controlling it with notes. You can also control the effects and things that are built into it. So you find MIDI people talk a lot about CC values. So these are control change values, and that just means ways of changing the effects on a synth. And we normally refer to these by number, and I think 1 is the modulation wheel. So let's try. Yeah, you can hear that's pretty wobbly. So here 1 is the number of the control, and 0, or whatever I've put here, 60, is the amount that I'm sending to it. I think normally it goes from 0 to 127. So this works in a similar way to sound, in that you can put in the sound followed by the N value in one pattern, or you can separate it out and put the N pattern in a separate control. Oops. So just the same, you can put it like this, just with CC, in a single pattern, or you can separate it out and put CCN, the CC number, and CCV, which stands for CC value. And if I put this on the left, that means I can now pattern this. So let's go between 0 and 127, so it's nice and clear that something's happening. So that's how you do CC values. So this synth in particular has another way of addressing effects called NRPN. I don't know what that stands for, but it's basically the same as CC values. It just gives you the possibility of having more of them, and also having finer grained control over them. So I think 9 stands for FM amount. You'll find that if you've got a synth, you'll be able to search online for the manual or the MIDI specification, which will tell you all of the ways that you can, or the CC numbers or the NRPN numbers that allow you to access the different effects. It tends to be quite different for different synths, so you'll probably have to search out the manual for your particular synthesizer that you've got. Okay, so this would be NRPNN now, because it's the number of the NRPN. I wouldn't be surprised if N also stands for number. I should have looked at that, really, sorry. And I know that this particular one goes from 0 to 1,000. So if I do... I could also do something like ran time 1,000. So now it's a random value. There we go. I think that is about it for MIDI for this video. In the next one, I'll have a look at controlling Tidal with external controllers, which is also fun. So see you then. Bye.